Today, we're talking about scandals, we're talking about gambling, and we have an expert, someone who's done a lot of research. Welcome again to another episode of the 1% in Recovery, where we encourage you to laugh every day, work hard, work hard in recovery, work hard in relationships, work hard in your job, career, school, just work. And to love unconditionally, put much more love out there and watch much more love return. We always say recovery is beautiful, your EQ is your IQ, and you cannot outthink an emotional issue. We encourage people to go to the website lifeiswonderful.love, Love, download the free, I repeat, the free Recovery Growth Scorecard, where you can start your recovery by getting natural dopamine, oxytocin, endorphin, serotonin. Start your recovery now, change that neuroplasticity. Now we are going to help me welcome Declan Hill, Professor Declan Hill. How are you doing? How are you feeling today?
I'm fantastic, actually. And I love that introduction. I really like that EQ equals your IQ and that you can't outthink an emotional issue. When you first hear a lot of these things, it sounds like a cliche, but the more you think of that about that, and the more, like everyone else who's listening, I've had all kinds of emotional issues in my life, as everyone does. I'm thinking, yeah, that's about right. You can never logically think your way out of it.
I know, well,
You've
that's
got
the
to
whole
do
thing. I mean, I went to a Jesuit high school. I went to the University of Texas. Later on, I went to Rice University. People will say, well, you have a lot of credentials, education. You should be able to work through it, just like we go through. And as you, as a professor, we think all you got to do is open a book or maybe talk to a few people, get a teacher. And it's not as simple as you like as learning mathematics or history or something like that.
No, absolutely. Look, you can always outthink someone else's emotional problems, but you can't outthink your own. Uh, and the other thing I think in terms of the endorphins and doing that is, I know you're going to ask me one of the things that I love, and I love sports. I love actually participating in sports. I love being the crappiest guy at my boxing gym. I love being a really good, not professional, but a really proficient soccer player, no matter what game I'm playing. But I just love that. I love that camaraderie and community and the good spirits. And I'm a big fan of the old Greek motto: healthy body, healthy mind. So no matter where I am, I'm trying to do exercise. I always try to put aside an hour a day of some kind of exercise. I tell my friends I'm like a dog. Somebody's got to throw a stick, and I got to run after it and get it. And if I don't do that healthy exercise, something is screwing me up, and I'm just not fully functional and fully there.
Well, no, well, I appreciate that. So you did answer, yeah, the one thing you love, but you like me like that competition. You like participating a little bit more than actually watching sports. You like both, but you probably like to participate more than watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Particularly now because I've really been inside the sausage factory. That old saying, if you like sausages, don't go to the factory. Well, I've been inside the soccer world and the sports world at a very, very high level. I've been inside the International Olympic Committee, FIFA, UEFA, National Football League, all these big sports leagues. And I've seen the way they operate. I've seen how they function. And they are effectively entertainment producers rather than genuine sport, and it can be extremely depressing. I'll give yourself and your listeners one example. I mean, I remember a few years ago, I was warning because I've infiltrated a number of these Asian match fixing gangs that travel around the world fixing games at major sports tournaments and leagues literally around the world, including the United States. And there were two senior officials at this soccer association. And one of them says, "Look, I'm so sorry. I got to go to the bathroom." He disappears. The other guy leans across the table and says, and the whole atmosphere changes in a dime. And he goes, "You know what, Mr. Hill? I have friends in Naples of the kind that you know, And if you do anything, I'm going to make sure they fuck you up. Now, Hugo and the listeners, first of all, I'm sorry for using profanity, but I want
No,
to
you
get your
can. No,
sense of
this is
my
a
pulse.
podcast. We got to be real.
And two, I can assure you, I'm not a very cool guy. I'm not some kind of James Bond 007. But at that moment, I did exactly the right thing. I laughed and I said, "Oh, really? Well, maybe your friends in Naples should meet my friends in Asia and they should get along." And then he starts laughing, and the two of us are laughing, and then the other guy returns, and nothing more is ever said. But those are, I mean, that's a far example to be threatened by mobsters by a high-ranking sports official. But that is what you see inside those sausage factories of producing professional or international sports. Some really sordid corruption. So, do I love sports? Yes. Do I love the Saturday morning, the cut grass? That community, that laughter
Right.
with my pals or whoever I'm. Even if it's strangers, that is infinitely preferable to the professional game.
Right, because if you listen to interviews with professionals in any type of sport, let's say they've been playing a sport for anywhere from 12 to 20 years, and when they're retiring and then they've left the sport, they say, "What are you going to miss the most?" They never say the sport. They say they're going to miss the locker room the most. They're going to miss going out on the court, the field, with their teammates to go to do battle to win, much more so than the actual playing of soccer, basketball, baseball, whatever the sport is. And that, I think, goes right to your point. We all want to be a part of a team. We all want to, and we would love to compete and win fairly.
Yeah, I think so, Hugo. But something comes to mind. I was just actually talking to a former high level Swedish women's soccer player, and she was saying to me, Declan, the day where I got to hang up my boots in 2018, where I just could walk away from soccer, was one of the happiest days of my life. It had just been so much pressure, so much of a grind, expectations, and I was never judged by who I am. I always was judged on what I could do on that field. If I played great, I was the most wonderful person. If I didn't play great, I'd get letters and texts and tweets and stuff talking about what a jerk I was.
Right,
So that was her joy of
right.
just being able to walk away from the sport.
I get it. Well, let's get into the questions. Question one. As you point out, scandals are on the rise. No surprise to me, but tell the audience, did you have any surprises in your research, investigations? And was there any similarities or differences between sports or maybe even countries?
Yeah, I'd say the pivotal moment I was doing, um, just to walk us back a little bit. I was an investigative journalist for a long time. My specialty was organized crime, um, and I had the great good fortune of getting a scholarship to do my PhD at the University of Oxford over in England on organized crime in sports. And myself and my supervisor, a brilliant guy called Diego Gambetta, who's one of the great world experts on the Sicilian Mafia, we decided to study match fixing because we could both do it qualitatively, but also use statistics to really lay the stuff out. And so during that path of research, I managed to infiltrate a couple of, as I was saying, major international match fixing gangs. And it sometimes we're traveling with them as they were fixing major sporting tournaments, including the FIFA World Cup. But I'll back up a little bit. The first time I met them or met the head of one of these particular gangs was a fairly intense, dramatic meeting. It was late night in a golf course in Singapore. And I get brought in, and there's a bodyguard there, and there's a beautiful woman on the bed, and there's the godfather or whatever with four or five phones sitting in front of him on the coffee table. And as we're talking more than 2 hours. He is picking up phones and he's fixing games around the world, and all this kind of stuff. And I finally say to him, I'm like, what's the biggest game you've ever fixed?" And he turns to me and goes, "I don't know. What's bigger, the Olympics or the World Cup?" And I had this moment, and again, I'm pretty sure most of our listeners have the same thoughts. The first one was, is this guy the biggest bullshitter in Asia? Like, is this
Mhm.
actually true? And the second thing, which was far more important, is how am I going to get out of this room alive? So very respectfully, I said, "Look, I'm so sorry, sir. I completely agree and think that you can fix these local Asian leagues. I know you have. I've seen your record. I know many of the guys here are frightened of you, but I'm so sorry. I just don't believe that you could fix a World Cup finals soccer game." And he looks at me with complete intensity and calmness and says, "Okay, watch me." And so my first book, The Fix: Soccer and Organized Crime, is about that journey, is about him fixing a game at the World Cup. And they succeeded. And they have succeeded in almost every international soccer tournament since the early 1990s. Um, they succeed because of a number of factors, but the most important one, which again I think is surprising to many people outside of the sausage making factory of professional sports, is that many players, many athletes, many teams, entire teams in the World Cup, in the Olympics, in these big sports tournaments do not get paid. They're supposed to get paid. To be very fair to FIFA, which has all kinds of other issues and of corruption and problems, FIFA does send millions of dollars to the National Soccer Association of each of the countries coming to play at the FIFA World Cup. But what frequently happens, not all the time, but so frequently no one's surprised, is the presidents or the top officials of that National Soccer Association take the cash, put it in their pockets, and don't pay the players. And so you have these teams of fantastic young athletes running onto the field. They're in stadiums which are sold out. They're watched by literally billions of people around the world. There are billions of dollars in sponsorship. The other team's getting paid. And this young male or woman, female, is thinking, they're getting paid, and I'm not. And I'm young now, but this ain't going to last my entire life. I better make some cash now. And the fixers have built up relationships with them for years and say, look, don't sell those first two games, but the game that you know you're going to lose or you're going to go home, take some cash, lose the game, and your biggest problem is how to get home with the cash because you can trust us. We're going to pay you. Your national soccer team official isn't going to pay you, but we'll pay you. So this has been going on in the big FIFA tournaments, as I said, since at least the early 1990s, when these criminals figured out that there was a globalized sports gambling market, that you could fix a game in Australia, but you could place money on an Asian gambling site in Hong Kong or Macau or Manila or wherever, and you could make cash literally doing these transcontinental fraudulent games with teams from sub-Saharan Africa or the former Soviet Union or those former Soviet countries where the levels of corruption are still staggeringly high. So every FIFA World Cup, under 17, under 20, women's, men's, has suffered from one or two of these corrupted matches in, I think, almost every single one of their tournaments since then.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, because you can watch certain documentaries or movies, on like Netflix where they talk about the cricket matches being fixed, whether it's FIFA and all the so many different sports. And nowadays, because the U.S. is so now heavily involved in sports betting, and we're kind of getting all this, so many people are watching certain things, just already assuming, something is rigged, something is already fixed. So I don't think, I think a lot more people are believing. I think 20 years ago, people were probably a little either more naive because they weren't either in the gambling world or they weren't deep into, like you said, the sports world. Can you tell a couple people, just tell people a couple of the books that you wrote specifically on this?
Yeah, two books. One is The Fix, Soccer and Organized Crime. The other one is The Insider's Guide to Match Fixing in Football. And I'm working right now, I've got a UK publisher, I'm bringing out another one called Blood Sports, which is really looking at the effects of this phenomenon, the globalized sports gambling market here in the United States. Because as you, and again, most of your listeners know, we here in America have been sold a tidal wave of malarkey since May 14th, 2018. It's just a tsunami of bullshit has flowed across American society. It's gone into newsrooms, it's gone into state legislatures, it's gone onto our screens. This flow of nonsense that the average person can make money from sports gambling. It's outrageous. It's not true. It's just
Well,
it's just
it's
utter
worse.
malarkey.
Yeah, but it's worse what they're doing to our youth. The 18 to 24-year-old males that are actually seeing sports betting as a possibly money generator, or thinking that, oh, I can bet on sports, it's going to be fun. And because number one, their undeveloped brain, that they're the ones who are even more susceptible to betting and now losing. And they wonder why all the states that have introduced sports betting, why the hotlines to their councils on compulsive gambling, problem gambling have shot up, why all those different problems. But, it almost like it's going to take a little more time for these numbers to keep increasing, because the media and the legislators are bought off by the gambling industry. So the media wants the advertising dollars, and then the legislators are, fed we're creating tax revenue, we're creating jobs, and not seeing the overall impact to the economy.
Only thing I take issue with you, Hugo, is you said 18 to 21. I
No,
actually,
24, 18 to 24. I mean, that's I'm saying that's the biggest increase. It's affecting everybody, but they're the ones that have had the more
again,
significant increase.
I take real issue with you because I don't think that it's that demographic. I think it's actually much, much younger. I think that the demographic that's really being hit hard is young males under the age of 18. And they're being really, really, really dragged down. Um,
No,
there are.
I agree with that as well. No, I mean there is, because now at the middle school level, I'm hearing about now, you know, the high school bookies. So yeah, I mean that's just another graphic is how young people are actually gambling, because what I think one of the statistics after being thrown out there is around like 60% of people before 18 have already gambled in within the past year. Uh,
Um, so there's a statistic out of the UK, and this is an interesting statistic, but it's one the bookmakers agree with. And you know how that particular value, that particular statistic is, but over 55,000 pathological teenage gamblers in the UK, and that's not just teenage gamblers that have placed a bet. That is guys who have completely screwed up their mental wiring at age 15. Now that's the statistic, and it's a statistic that would fill the Yankee Stadium, would fill almost any sports stadium in North America, or most of them. But the ones done by independent, gambling watchdog put it far, far higher. 160,000, 200, 250,000 teenage gamblers, pathological gamblers, not just gamblers who've done something. The issue for me, because I work in sports integrity, is that within that demographic, be it 14 to 18, or as you say, 18 to 21, 18 to 24, is the really high um, rate of addiction is among athletes. Because everything that makes a young man good at sports makes him a terrible gambler.
exactly.
Never giving up, complete obsession, always wants to win, thinks that they can overturn odds at the last minute. It's their team is two goals down or 10 points down, and they're gonna keep trying and doing that. That's fantastic if you're an athlete. But as a gambler, that like you suck. And it's a straight road to addiction. So again, some of the things that I think uh, may be challenging to our listeners, like it's not possible that these big games could be fixed by outside criminals with the kind of less passivity of these sports officials. I'm saying, yes, not only has it been happening, but now because of legalized sports gambling, we're seeing a tsunami of, excuse me, I've used that word too often today. I'll call it a plague. There's a silent plague of uh, gambling addiction among our athletes. And the sports leagues don't want to talk about it. Again, they're sausage making factories. People inside the industry definitely don't want to speak about that because as soon as people know how widespread addiction is among the athletes that they're betting on, it's another reason to doubt the credibility of the sports. So we have some really significant issues, and very much like the addiction issues that you deal with regularly on the podcast, there is a curtain of silence that has dropped over these issues that people were officials, the bookmakers, the data collectors, whoever, will desperately don't want people to know these things and desperately don't want people to talk about them.
Oh yeah, because it's going to affect their stock price. It's going to affect their future growth, and the other thing is because they talk. There's a lot of statistics. Alcohol consumption has gone down at almost every level. But I say, but that doesn't really mean a lot if weed smoking and gambling have shot up, and gambling more so because it's on our phones. And I always say one of the things is gambling is like the digital Trojan horse. People download these apps thinking it's going to be fun, and they open up and then they just get slaughtered. It's just they have no idea what they are downloading and opening up. But let's get into this second question. The gambling industry likes to point out that legalized and regulated gambling industry is able to police themselves as well as flesh out any scandal or fix. What is your opinion of this claim? And also, I'd like to say, this insistence on prop betting, live betting, micro betting only increases the chances of more people getting involved in either some type of cheat, some type of fix.
Okay, I've just picked myself up off the floor. I didn't fully hear your second question, but the first one made me laugh so hard. I'm sorry, Hugo. So the sports leagues can regulate themselves? Sure, guys. That's like the NFL doesn't need referees or umpires. Yeah, yeah, sure, guys. Yeah, you know what? Let's take out all the match officials and those two teams in your wonderful self-regulated industry can police themselves. Right, guys. I mean,
Well, it's like I always say, it's like the tobacco industry constantly telling us for years that cigarette smoking did not cause cancer.
well, how many societies are moving to get rid of police? Sorry, guys, it just doesn't work. You need independent outside investigators to make sure your sausage factory, to, again, go back to that image, is producing non toxic meat. And the guys inside the sausage factory going, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with this. Don't worry about it." Oh, and to be fair to sausage factory guys, if they produce bad meat, they're not happy about it, but they don't want anyone to know about it. They want to quietly destroy it or make sure that anyone who is killed off by it, nobody knows about it. Self-regulation does not work. Never has, never will, and doesn't pass the scrutiny test beyond 3 seconds. Two, prop bets are deliberate. Again, I'm talking to an expert, but they're a deliberately designed gambling addictive mechanism designed to bring unknowing gamblers into high dopamine states, and so they'll lose more and more of their money. No professional gambler ever does prop bets. Prop bets are specifically designed to encourage addiction. So, yeah, that's what I'll say about that question. One is self-regulation does
But
not,
then also,
cannot,
prop
never does.
betting allows more people to do more parlays, which gives the sports books a higher percentage of a win to get all these people to think that they actually have a chance. Well, I'm going to win 5 to 1. it never works.
Yeah, look, parlaying, prop bets. This is not the stuff of the true professional sports gambler. Prop bets,
Mhm.
because you literally cannot make enough money on them to make the research and time involved in it worthwhile. Maybe you can pull off one or two, but it's very, very difficult. And parlay, it's just nonsense. Don't touch them. Don't look at them. Don't. It's just nonsense.
Well, no, and actually, you know what happened? What was it? Even a few weeks ago, the NCAA sold all their data to a company called Genius, which is partially owned by the NFL. And I always say, you're allowing these corporations access to more and more of the data, which means that they're going to be able to make the prop bets even harder to win.
Yeah, look, it's not just that. And I'm sorry, I'm now changed from full good humor to just exasperated sighing, because there's no clear blue water between the sports leagues and these betting providers, and there has to be for anyone to take these sports seriously, there has to be clear blue water between the sports leagues and the people that are providing data for the betting market. And there's just none. And it saps the credibility of the sports league. It saps the credibility of the sports. The second issue is that again, I've seen countless articles in the last couple of months with the sports leagues when they've caught their players cheating or faking prop bets, saying, "Oh, we really wish these gambling companies wouldn't offer the bets. Oh, it's so difficult." And the NBA has proposed a $200 limit on prop bets. And my sense is, come on, guys, just cut off the data. Just stop making these cash deals. Stop providing live time data in propositional bets or on these events that are easily manipulated. Bang, problem solved. You're going to lose X tens of millions of dollars because you're not providing data about everything, but it instantly eliminates the issue. It's the same thing with international tennis, which is one of the most affected sports in the world with match fixing, because there's so many individual events inside a tennis game that can be corrupted and fixed without affecting the outcome. Well, then stop offering data on those small individual events. Stop offering the data on these small tournaments where the players are lucky to make 200 bucks, but you're offering it on the gambling market. Just take them off. Just take them off. But the sports leagues have gotten into bed with the devil, and it's really going to pay. They really, really will pay for their short-term greed and cupidity.
Right, because they did the one thing that I you would think that they would have learned and what they would not do, because it goes back all the way like even to 1919 with the Black Sox and all the other reasons and if you, all the examples over the 100 years of why they were against gambling, because they weren't looking for this really short term win. And I say that the gambling industry went from playing the long game to actually becoming the gambler with all the prop betting, with everything that they are doing. They're trying to win today instead of just let it play out where they'll eventually win. And
Look,
their greed, right? And you said it perfectly. Their greed is going to be their downfall.
Look, there was a whole bunch of sports that were killed off, professional sports that were killed off in the late 1800s. Like nobody pays any attention to professional rowing, pedestrianism, archery. Those were the big sports. Like rowing was the big sport in the Western world. New York Giants, Argonauts, Corinthians. Like there's a whole bunch of these big sports teams, be that in Canada or America or Brazil or England or wherever, who were dominated. Professional rowing was huge. And professional rowing was killed off because there was so much sports gambling, there was so much match fixing going on, and the people just switched it off. And by the middle of the 1890s, professional sports, be it cycling, be it whatever, was hitting major, major issues with sports gambling and fixing and corruption. And the whole world of sports was in appalling problems. So what happened was six guys met in the back of a Paris restaurant in 1894 and said, what are we going to do with this sports gambling and all this corruption? And they came up on the back of an envelope the idea of the International Olympics, borrowing from the Greeks. And that's where the International Olympic movement comes from. It comes as a reaction to widespread corruption and the killing off of major sports. We're now replicating exactly what our forefathers and foremothers did back in the 1800s. We're killing off our sports. And there will be a time in the next 5 years when one of the American sports leagues will disintegrate. There will be such a major scandal where the extent of the gambling addiction among their athletes is clearly perceived by the fans and the sporting public and the sponsors. And people will simply not be able to believe the credibility of that sport anymore. And it will fold. And that's what we're facing now. And sports leagues have, as I said, whenever you do a deal with the devil, it always seems good at first. But they're really walking their way into an existential crisis. And again, I challenge any of our listeners, watch any sports event over the course of the next summer. And there's going to be a time when you're going to look at the game, whatever it is, and go, is that for real? Did that really happen? Or am I just watching scripted theater? And you guys aren't conspiracy theorists. You're not fantasists. But knowing the extent of addiction among the athletes, the extent of corruption, the power of a $1.63 trillion addictive sports gambling industry worldwide on these sports, it's going to come. It's going to come. And it's going to come when enough good faith sports fans just go, you know what, I just can't trust your product anymore. And that will happen to one of the American sports leagues very soon.
Yeah, and even now they're throwing in all this prediction market with the call sheets, with the poly markets, and then the division. And they're almost even arguing amongst themselves as what's an actual legal bet or an illegal bet. And they don't realize what they thought was we're just going to allow different states to bet on a game just like the normal way, the line, pick one team or another. And they just keep tripping over themselves with trying to speed up how many bets they can make in an hour, how many different ways they can try to induce more gambling. And we've noticed this in the Major League Baseball. Certain pitchers have been now called out for actually naming specific pitches that they were already cheating on. And like he says, it will not surprise me. I think for a lot of people, they still have this almost naive, youthful belief in sport on the innocence that it's all about a competition and not knowing that they're almost taking a playbook out of the WWE, the World Wrestling Association, where everything is actually scripted.
Yeah,
And
I don't think that this is a figment of your imagination, Hugo. It's actually based in legal fact. Look, it used to be back in the 1980s and early 90s, the worldwide wrestling, but they changed it because there was a court case making its way through the courts where one of their star wrestlers, a guy named Hulk Hogan, was suing the company and was going to say, hey, look, I'm going to reveal to the world how many of the bouts are fixed. So what they did was they re-engineered WWF into WWE, Worldwide Entertainment, World Wrestling Entertainment. And so they treated it as an entertainment so that a wrestler would come forward and say, oh, yeah, well, it's fixed. Or, we're faking the fight. It goes, well, that doesn't matter because it's just an entertainment. Since that time in the early 90s, almost every single one of the professional sports leagues has done exactly the same thing. And they've changed their entity from a sports league into an entertainment product. So your analogy with wrestling and other professional sports is exactly legally accurate now.
yeah. All right, well, let's go to question 3. Let's just kind of just break it down to make it simple. Is there anything that you would advise or suggest to the gambling, any of the gambling sports leagues, or I mean, to the sports leagues or to the gambling industry on what they
Yeah,
need, mainly
I
to the
do, Hugo.
sports?
Listen, it's breathtakingly simple. It's getting back to one of your early questions about self-regulation. You can't have self-regulation. And again, to return to the model of sausage-making factories, there's a reason why back in the early 1900s, our great grandparents introduced meat inspectors who would go around to the packing plants, who were independently paid by the government to ensure that the quality of our food was safe. And they're not paid by the meat industry, they're paid by the government. And we need that. We need an independent sports integrity agency, independent of the sports leagues, independent of all the pressures from sponsors or whoever, who is able to go in and properly investigate the integrity challenges to sports. Australia has done that. I've flown over a number of times to Australia to speak about this issue, and they have instituted a fantastic model. So there's one out there already. It just takes American innovation and courage to stand up and say, you know what, we've gone down this route. Let's stop, turn around, and let's institute independent integrity agency and take some of the cash that we're getting from this multi hundreds of billions of dollars industry here in America. Say, just take a small fraction of that cash and put it to an independent agency that can properly protect athletes from doping, from sexual scandals, from sexual abuse scandals, from match fixing and corruption. Can really ensure this properly. It's not difficult to do. It's been done already in another country. It just takes an act of imagination and willingness to do by our politicians. That's what it takes.
I love it. So you will see the books and any all the other pertinent information in the show notes. So there's going to be an ability either to find and purchase the book or to get in touch with Professor Hill and find out all this other fabulous research that he is
Hey,
doing.
Hugo, you know what I'd love is I'm trying to build up my social media following. That would really help me in terms when I'm dealing with the publishers. So if you guys, if you've liked what I'm saying, if you're interested and curious in my mind and what I'm producing, follow me either on Substack. You'll find me Declan Hill at Crime Waves. You'll see, apart from the conversation that Hugo and I have just had, I did, well, along with my students at the university, a major investigation into the Jeffrey Epstein death at the Metropolitan Correctional Center, were
Okay.
some really interesting stuff that I don't think has been shared widely in the popular media about how he could have died. Um, so Substack is one, or reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. That would really help me a great
That's
deal.
excellent. We'll have all of that in the show notes and any other um, reels or posts that I do on my different social media, just different ways to just get in contact with either one of us. But I appreciate your time this afternoon. Any last words or any quotes or any little bits of gems that you want to just throw out?
Yes, let me take a moment to explain in part why I do what I do. I'm as guys can hear from my accent. I'm an Irish Canadian, but my mother and that side of the family are American. My grandfather was a small town surgeon in Nashua, New Hampshire, and on December 8th, 1941, as a man in his late middle age, he walked into the Naval enlistment recruiting office and signed up and went to the Seventh Fleet and fought at Iwo Jima and Leyte Gulf. And I remember speaking to him, in just before he died and asking him why he had done that. And he said, "They can't do that to my country. They cannot attack my country and attack my people and my community. Yes, I was in my 50s. Yes, I was a doctor. Yes, I had a family. Yes, I could have turned down those things, but I am proud of my community and I was going to stand up and fight for it." I walk around New England, I walk around some of the communities where my grandfather fought for, and I see a declining, decaying, dwindling America. I see an America that has been hit hard by addiction. And this gambling addiction and this attack on our sports is yet another attack on America. I would never compare my courage and fortitude with my grandfather and people like him, but I believe that U.S. sports can be saved. They're the way that we pass on our morals, our values, our ideals to the younger generation. They bring our community together. They give us strength. They give us joy and entertainment and fun. And they should be saved. And I believe they must be saved. So that's why I do this, Hugo. That's why I do my work. That's why I never gamble, because I don't want any of your listeners to think that in some way, somehow, I might be profiting from this work. I'm resolutely independent. I don't take money from bookmakers, and I will fight to my last drop of energy to protect our sports and our community. So that's why I do what I do. And I really, really thank you, Hugo, for letting me speak to you and your listeners, and hoping that we can start to really take the fight for honesty and integrity in our sports.
No, I appreciate your time. I love getting different aspects on what people are doing, especially if you're in research or just dealing with the gambler that's been struggling. That it's not entertainment and it's not fun what the gambling industry tries to portray. That this is, like you say, it's just devastating on all different levels. But with all that, we are going to conclude this episode of the 1% in Recovery. Till next week.